bare. That's because of harvesting that's taking place all the time. But let's look more closely, see some of the successes and some of the problems that are starting to arise. Now, some people worry when this sort of thing happens to their young pumpkins. Can you see how it's starting to decay back there? And it'll soon drop off. It's no big deal. It's simply because the flower hasn't been fertilised. There's one there. Right, now they're no good at all, of course, but there's nothing to worry about at all because, look, there's plenty more coming on. The thing that does happen with the pumpkins, they tend to reach out all over the place. Now's the time to stop them simply by pinching out the end like that. And that means those pumpkins remaining will start to swell out like mad and develop into a good crop. Can you see the blotchy appearance on these zucchini leaves? Well, that's perfectly normal. It's part of the leaf pattern. You don't have to spray for this. The real problem here is massive overcrowding. I did it on purpose. But the problem arises down here where it's moist and stagnant air. Can you see how mouldy these little patty pan squashes have become? Look, all you do is simply open it up and cut them off like that. And there's another one. And by the way, where they're touching other fruit, they'll send those mouldy too. So don't hesitate to remove them. There they are. Now, this is really interesting. Can you see the way this pumpkin vine has started to wend its happy little way through all the sweet corn? That's perfectly normal. Sweet corn and pumpkin tribe, they just love each other. I even poke them inside, and that means the pumpkin can go berserk in there. Because remember, when the cobs are picked, the stalks are still there, and that means that they'll shelter the pumpkin down below from any frost. As for the cobs, well look, this is only developing fairly slowly. Remember that as soon as that silk gets very brown indeed, and this gets really fat and thick with kernels, that's when it's harvested. At the moment, it wants a massive watering. As for the tomatoes, well, they've had a bit of a hard go. They got blown around a bit in the wind, and I think they dried out a little bit over Christmas. And you can tell, look at the fruit here. Can you see this one here? See how it's split? Now that's caused when a tomato dries, the skin gets a bit tough, and then you get a surge of new moisture, and of course it splits. It loses its flexibility. But it's no big deal because the rest of them are quite marvellous. Of course, when midwinter comes, this lot here would have been cut to the ground by the frost, and the whole lot would have been cleared away anyway. And this is the new onion tribe bed. I can hardly wait. I want to put in some leeks, and now's the perfect time to plant them. And of all the vegetables, leeks are the easiest to grow. You can't go wrong. All you do is just simply make holes with a stake, like that, every few centimetres. Easiest job in the world. And then you get your leek seedlings and just drop one into each hole, like that. Just drop it in. And here's the clue. You don't backfill. You just leave them there. In fact, all you do is give them a watering, and the water washes just enough soil around the roots to hold them. And what happens is that down below the ground, those lovely shanks get lovely and white as the soil drifts in. That's how simple it is. The way to harvest onions is just simply pull them from the ground. They're virtually sitting there anyway when they're mature, and toss them onto an open, exposed area where they can just gently dry off in the sun. Now, these are what they call tree onions. That's the part on the end of the stem there. And this whole lot here came from the equivalent of that little cluster of bulbs and a couple of these small bulbs at the bottom. That's another reason why you should do everything you can to try and seek out these marvellous onions. This bed is now empty. But it's not going to remain empty for long because this is now going to become the new legume bed. In about 2 or 3 weeks' time, I'm going to sow some broad beans. And then later on, peas and bush beans as the summer comes on next year. So on goes the blood and bone now. And this is a surprise, and it's an unpleasant one. Can you hear that? It's the worst blood and bone I've ever come across. Look at this stuff. There it is. Can you see those great lumps of bone? Almost 50% of this is great lumps of bone. It'll take about 1,000 years for them to break down. You may as well use blooming road metal in this case. So if you ever come across lousy blood and bone like this, do as I'm going to do and complain bitterly about it. As it is, I'll just use this, but I'll get some proper blood and bone from somewhere else. There we are, all over. Now you can see how our little veggie patch is producing, developing and changing all the time. Don't forget, if you have pumpkins, to pinch out those growing tips, you'll get better crops. If your sweet corn's developing its cobs, give it a really deep watering. And onions, remember, are harvested by chucking them onto a dry area so they can dry out in the sun. And all the time this is going on, there's a wonderful, relentless rotation also occurring. That's what I call good organic growing.